My name's Ben Thompson, 27, and I live in Seattle with my wife, Sarah. We've been married for 3 years, and up until recently, I thought we had one of those marriages where communication was everything. You know, the kind where we could talk openly about our desires, boundaries, and explore new things together. Sarah was always adventurous, and I never felt insecure about it until recently. A few months ago, Sarah brought up something during one of our late-night conversations. We were lying in bed after a long day when she casually mentioned a swinging experience. I knew we were into trying new things, but this felt like it came out of nowhere. "Anna, my friend from work, mentioned it," she said, trying to sound casual. She and her husband, Mark, tried it before. She thought it could be fun for us. Now, I'd met Anna and Mark a couple of times. Seemed like normal, happy people, and Sarah seemed really excited. At first, I was intrigued but also hesitant. Swinging was a big leap, but I trusted Sarah. We were honest with each other, and that's what mattered, right? I let the idea sit with me for a few days. Sarah kept bringing it up casually, testing the waters. Finally, I agreed. But the more I thought about it, the more a weird feeling settled in my gut. It wasn't about the act itself. It was about Sarah, her eagerness, how this wasn't just an idea she randomly thought of. Something wasn't adding up, but I pushed it aside, wanting to believe we were just exploring together. The night of the party came quicker than expected. It was held in a luxurious house in Bellevue way, nicer than our place. Couples mingled, the lights were low, and there was an undeniable charge in the air. I spotted Anna and Mark across the room as we walked in, and Sarah immediately made a beeline for them. She hugged Anna, then Mark a little too close. Their eyes lingered on each other, and a chill ran down my spine. Was I imagining things? Was I just being paranoid? The night wore on, and Sarah's focus was laser-locked on Mark. It wasn't just flirtation. It felt familiar. I shook it off, trying to be cool. This was all new to me, and maybe I just needed to relax. But every time I saw them together, my gut tightened a little more. Anna, meanwhile, was making conversation with me, clearly sensing my unease. After a couple of drinks, I leaned in and asked Anna, "So, how did you bring up this swinging idea with Sarah?" Anna looked puzzled. "What do you mean? I didn't suggest it. Mark was the one who brought it up, and to be honest, I wasn't too keen on coming tonight." Her words hit me like a truck. I felt the room spin. Mark had brought up the idea. Sarah had lied about where the suggestion came from. I wasn't imagining things after all. I excused myself, my mind racing. Sarah had planned this. She wasn't just into exploring something new, she'd been having an affair with Mark, and this party was their way of legitimizing it, making it seem innocent under the guise of experimentation. My heart pounded, but I kept my cool. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. No, not yet. I needed a plan. After that conversation with Anna, I was spinning. Sarah had lied about something as simple as where the idea came from, which made me wonder what else she'd been lying about. I tried to stay composed for the rest of the night, but my mind was racing. Sarah, though? She was having the time of her life. I'd catch glimpses of her with Mark, sharing secretive smiles, brushing up against each other. It wasn't just flirty anymore. It was intimate. They had a connection that went beyond just curiosity. I felt like a third wheel in my own marriage, watching my wife slip away right before my eyes. As the night dragged on, Anna and I exchanged more knowing glances. Neither of us was oblivious to what was happening. The way Sarah and Mark were glued together, it wasn't the nervous excitement of first-time swingers. They were too comfortable, too familiar. By the end of the night, when it was time to leave, Sarah was practically glowing. She couldn't stop talking about how amazing the experience was, how freeing it felt. I just nodded along, pretending to share her enthusiasm, all the while calculating my next steps. The drive home was a blur of her rambling excitement and my forced responses. She had no clue what was swirling in my head, no idea that I was piecing it all together. It was clear as day now she'd been involved with Mark for a while, and this party was a cover-up for something much bigger. But I wasn't going to confront her yet. No, that would be too easy. I needed to be smart about this. If she had gone to such lengths to deceive me, then I had to turn the tables on her. Over the next week, I quietly started gathering evidence. I went through her phone when she was asleep, digging through her texts and photos. Sure enough, there were messages between her and Mark. Not explicit, but full of inside jokes, lingering memories, and suggestions of meetups. The more I uncovered, the more furious I became. She had been playing me for a fool. But the real kicker? One night, I found a video on her phone, a clip she had accidentally saved in her gallery, showing her and Mark in bed together. My stomach turned. It was all the confirmation I needed. The affair wasn't just a suspicion, it was fact. And now I had proof. I wasn't just going to confront her. I wasn't going to let her off with some half-hearted apology or lie. No, I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. I wanted her to see everything she thought she was getting away with come crashing down. But how? That's when I remembered Anna. She had been just as blindsided as me, left alone to watch her husband flirt and scheme with my wife. If anyone understood what I was going through, it was her. I decided to reach out. We met for coffee the next day. There was a heaviness between us, but also an understanding. Neither of us wanted to be there, but we had to deal with the mess our spouses had dragged us into. I laid it all out for her, the texts, the video, everything I had found. She wasn't surprised. Hurt, yes, but not shocked. I've suspected for a while, she admitted. Mark's been distant for months, but I didn't have proof. Now I do, thanks to you. We sat in silence for a moment before I finally said what had been brewing in my mind for days. I want to get back at them, but I can't do it alone. Anna looked at me, her expression hardening. What do you have in mind? Anna stared at me, her eyes narrowing as the gears in her head turned. She sipped her coffee, clearly weighing the idea of teaming up for revenge. After a long pause, she leaned in. I'm in, she said, her voice steady but laced with anger. What are you thinking? I laid out my plan carefully. It wasn't enough just to confront them. Sarah and Mark had gone out of their way to manipulate us, using this swinging pretense as a cover for their months-long affair. They didn't deserve the simple satisfaction of being caught. They needed to feel the same level of betrayal they had inflicted on us. But we had to be smart about it. We couldn't just throw the evidence in their faces and walk away. We had to play along for a little while longer. We can't let them know we're onto them, I explained. If we do, they'll just spin it, act like we misunderstood, maybe even blame us for agreeing to this experiment. No, we need to set them up, make them think everything's fine, like we're totally cool with this swinging thing. Anna nodded, her face tightening with determination. So what's the plan? I leaned in, laying out each step as the idea fully formed in my mind. We let them plan another fun night. Only this time, we'll be the ones calling the shots. We'll agree to whatever they suggest, but on one condition. You and I partner up, and they can go off together. It'll be the perfect setup. Her brow furrowed. And then what? Then, I said, we hit them where it hurts. I've got all the evidence, texts, photos, the video. We'll expose them when they least expect it. Not just to each other, but to everyone around them. Friends, family, coworkers, whoever matters most to them. But we'll do it after they think they've gotten away with everything. Anna smiled grimly. You want to embarrass them, don't you? I nodded. They've already ruined our trust. Now it's time to ruin their reputation. We both sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what we were about to do settling in. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. About making them feel the shame they so casually avoided by using lies and manipulation. The next step was setting the trap. I didn't have to wait long. Just a few days after our coffee meeting, Sarah brought up the idea of another fun night. She had that same glint in her eye, the one that told me this wasn't just about swinging, it was about her and Mark. This time, I didn't hesitate. Sure, I said, smiling like I was all in. But let's mix things up. How about Anna and I pair up, and you can go with Mark? Sarah looked surprised for a split second, then quickly recovered, nodding enthusiastically. Yeah, that could be fun. Fun for her, maybe. But for me, it was the beginning of the end for her, for Mark, for everything they thought they were getting away with. Anna and I kept in touch over the next few days, refining our plan. We both played along with our respective spouses, pretending we were excited for the night ahead. Meanwhile, I gathered more evidence text messages Sarah exchanged with Mark about their excitement for the upcoming party, little comments that confirmed what I already knew. They thought they were in control. The night of the party finally arrived. We showed up, playing the part of eager, open-minded partners. Sarah and Mark couldn't stop exchanging looks, thinking they had fooled us again. I could almost laugh at how smug they seemed, completely unaware that the noose was tightening around them. As the evening unfolded, I stuck close to Anna, making small talk with the other couples, but my focus was on Sarah and Mark. They disappeared into one of the bedrooms, thinking they had free rein to continue their affair without suspicion. Meanwhile, Anna and I stayed behind, quietly observing as the charade played out. It was almost too perfect. I had everything I needed: proof of their betrayal, a plan to destroy their reputations, and now the opportunity to let them think they had one. But the real fun? That was coming soon. The night was progressing exactly how I'd hoped. Sarah and Mark, completely unaware of the trap they'd walked into, were in full swinging mode, acting as if this was all one big game they had mastered. Meanwhile, Anna and I kept our cool, pretending to go along with the evening's vibe, all while knowing that the real climax was coming. After a few drinks and some mingling, Sarah grabbed Mark's hand, giving me a wink as she led him toward one of the upstairs rooms. I could feel the smugness radiating off of her, like she had successfully played me once again. What she didn't know was that this would be the last time she got away with anything. As soon as they disappeared, Anna and I exchanged a glance. The signal was clear. It was time to start phase 2. "I guess it's just us now," I said with a grin, keeping up the pretense. We clinked our glasses together, playing the part of the relaxed, easygoing couple. But beneath the surface, we both knew this was about more than pretending. I suggested we head to the den downstairs where it was quieter. The party was still lively, but I needed privacy for what was coming next. Anna agreed, and we slipped away from the crowd. As we sat down on the couch, I pulled out my phone and showed her the latest messages between Sarah and Mark, the ones they'd sent right before tonight's party, full of innuendo and inside jokes. Anna's lips tightened as she read. "They really think they're getting away with it," she muttered. "Not for long," I replied. With everything in place, we launched the final part of our plan. I had already backed up the texts, videos, and pictures onto a shared drive, accessible to anyone with the link. We had decided to time the release of this evidence perfectly right when Sarah and Mark thought they were in the clear. I sent the link to Anna, and she smiled coldly as she forwarded it to a carefully curated list of people. Sarah's closest friends, Mark's coworkers, a few family members, and of course, their own partners from previous swinging events. If Sarah and Mark thought their secret was safe, they were in for the shock of a lifetime. As we sat there in silence, phones buzzing with the evidence being sent, I could feel the adrenaline rushing through me. The satisfaction wasn't immediate. It wasn't about the quick confrontation. No, this was about letting them slowly realize that the walls were closing in on them, one person at a time. And then, the real twist hit me. "Anna, what if we take this one step further?" She raised an eyebrow, intrigued but cautious. "What do you mean?" "Mark is always texting Sarah about work-related things, right? Imagine if a few of these messages accidentally ended up on his work chat. You know, where his boss and team can see it." Anna's eyes widened, and a small smile crept across her face. "Ben, that's brilliant." It didn't take much effort. I had more than enough incriminating evidence to do some real damage. A few quick clicks, and soon enough, Mark's colleagues were going to see the true side of him, the side that wasn't the charming, laid-back guy at the office. Just as we were finalizing everything, I heard the door upstairs creak open. Sarah and Mark emerged, looking flushed and satisfied, completely oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. Sarah sauntered over to me, sliding an arm around my waist. "You and Anna have a good time?" I looked her dead in the eyes, smiling in a way that must have unsettled her because she hesitated. "Oh, we had a great time." "You?" Mark chuckled, completely at ease. "Yeah, man, it was awesome. It was almost too easy." I had to hold back the satisfaction bubbling up inside me as they stood there, clueless. They thought they'd pulled off the perfect crime, but little did they know, their carefully crafted facade was already crumbling. We left the party shortly after that, Sarah still in high spirits. On the drive home, she talked nonstop about how fun and liberating the night had been, oblivious to the fact that her phone was about to start blowing up with messages, ones that would change her world. When we got home, she kissed me goodnight and went to bed, as if everything was normal. I watched her for a moment, wondering how someone could lie so easily, so convincingly. But that was all about to end. As soon as she was asleep, I sent the final piece of our revenge plan. A copy of the video I'd found on Sarah's phone to her personal email. A message from me attached to it, simple and cold. I know everything. And now, it was just a matter of time before her entire life came crashing down. The next morning, I woke up early. Sarah was still asleep, peaceful and unaware of the chaos I had set in motion. I couldn't help but wonder what her reaction would be when she finally checked her phone. Would she try to deny it? Would she lash out in panic? Either way, her carefully built web of lies was about to collapse. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and waited. It didn't take long. I heard the familiar chime of Sarah's phone buzzing from the bedroom, followed by a pause. Then another buzz, and another. Within moments, her phone was going off like a fire alarm, buzz after buzz, message after message. I imagined the confusion on her face as she scrolled through them, trying to make sense of what was happening. Then came the sound I was waiting for, her sharp gasp. She must have opened the email, the video, my message. Seconds later, Sarah burst into the kitchen, her face pale, phone clutched in her hand. She looked like she'd just been hit by a train. "Ben, what is this?" she stammered, her voice shaky, full of disbelief. "I don't understand. Why would you do this?" I calmly sipped my coffee, not bothering to stand up or even look at her. "What don't you understand, Sarah? You've been lying to me for months, cheating on me with Mark, and then you tried to cover it up with this whole swinging nonsense. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Her mouth opened and closed like she was trying to form a defense, but no words came out. She glanced at her phone again, then back at me. "Ben, I can explain. This wasn't what you think, save it." I cut her off, my voice cold. "I already know everything. I've seen the messages, the videos. You and Mark have been at this long before you ever mentioned swinging to me. This wasn't about us exploring anything new, was it? It was about you finding a way to justify your affair." She froze, the guilt written all over her face. For the first time since I'd known her, Sarah was speechless. I could see the wheels turning in her head, desperately searching for a way out of this. But there wasn't one. Not anymore. "And don't bother trying to spin it to anyone else," I added, standing up slowly. "Because, as of about 12 hours ago, everyone knows. Your friends, your coworkers, your family, they've all seen the evidence." Her eyes widened in horror. "No, Ben, please, you didn't." She looked genuinely terrified now, realizing that this was bigger than just the two of us. "I did," I said, my voice calm but final. "It's all out there. There's no hiding it anymore. So, what now?" For a moment, I thought she was going to collapse right there. The confident, adventurous woman who had dragged me into this mess was gone, replaced by someone who was suddenly fragile and exposed. She sank into a chair, her hands trembling as she stared at her phone in disbelief. I leaned against the counter, watching her crumble under the weight of her lies. "You used me, Sarah. You thought you could keep this affair going right under my nose, but you made one big mistake. You underestimated me." Her voice cracked as she tried to regain some control. "Ben, I'm sorry. I was stupid. I never meant for this to happen. Didn't mean for it to happen." I scoffed. "You planned it. You schemed with Mark, lied to me for months, and then tried to sell this as some experiment. I trusted you, Sarah, and you threw that trust away." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt nothing. There was no pity, no sympathy left. She'd already drained me of those long ago. "I'll fix this," she whispered. "I'll explain it to everyone. We can fix it?" I interrupted, laughing bitterly. "You can't fix this, and I don't want to. We're done, Sarah. I'm filing for divorce today." Her face drained of color. "No, Ben, please don't do this. I'll do anything, please. Don't end it like this." But I was already past caring. "It's already over," I said, heading for the door. I'll be staying somewhere else for a while. You can pack your things when I'm gone. And don't even think about trying to get anything out of me in the divorce. You're walking away with nothing. I left her sitting there, broken and sobbing, but it didn't faze me. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. But that wasn't the end of it. Not yet. As I walked out, my phone buzzed with a message from Anna. She had followed through with her part of the plan. Mark had just been exposed at work. His colleagues were already talking about it, how he'd been using company time and resources to plan his little affair with Sarah. And the best part? Mark's boss wasn't happy. In fact, his job was already on the line. Everything was falling apart for them, just as I had planned. I left the house without looking back, walking into a clear, crisp Seattle morning. My mind was clear now, focused. There was no turning back, and honestly, I didn't want to. I wasn't going to wait around for Sarah to beg, cry, or try to manipulate her way out of this mess. She had made her bed, and now she'd lie in it alone. As I drove, I couldn't help but think about what must have been happening at Mark and Anna's place. Anna had told me she planned to confront Mark first thing in the morning, with all the evidence lined up just like I'd done with Sarah, but she wasn't going to stop there. No, she had something even bigger planned for him, something that would hit him harder than just the exposure. I got a text from Anna not long after I pulled into a coffee shop to collect my thoughts. I opened it, already feeling the satisfaction brewing inside me. It was short but to the point. It's done. He's panicking. I couldn't help but smirk. Mark, the overconfident, smug guy who thought he could carry on an affair with my wife right under my nose, was finally facing the consequences. I called Anna, eager to hear how it had gone down. He's a mess, she said, her voice calm but with a touch of satisfaction. I laid it all out for him this morning, every text, every photo. I even printed out the ones he sent to Sarah from his work email. He tried to deny it at first, but when I told him about the video you found, he just fell apart. And what did you do? I asked, curious to hear how she delivered the final blow. I told him it's over, she said bluntly. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm making sure his job knows exactly what he's been doing on company time. He tried to beg, tried to convince me it didn't mean anything, but I wasn't having it. I smiled to myself, picturing the scene. Mark, desperate, realizing he had nowhere to turn. What about his job? Do you think they'll fire him? Anna chuckled. Oh, they will. I made sure of it. I sent everything to his boss this morning, the emails, the timestamp messages, everything. He's probably scrambling right now, trying to save his career. But with what I sent, it's only a matter of time. We talked for a bit longer, both of us savoring the taste of justice. Anna had been as hurt and betrayed as I was, but now she was taking control of her own life again, just like I was. We were both moving on without the people who had tried to break us. Later that day, I stopped by my lawyer's office to start the divorce proceedings. I was done. There was no way I was going to let Sarah drag this out or try to squeeze anything more from me. She'd already lost everything she could have had with me, and I was making sure she walked away with nothing more than her shame. It wasn't until I was leaving the lawyer's office that I got the text I'd been waiting for. Mark just got fired. Anna had followed through. Mark's boss had finally pulled the trigger, and Mark's career was over, just like his marriage. I sat in my car, thinking about how quickly everything had spiraled out of control for them. It wasn't just about the affair anymore, it was about the reckoning that followed. The lies, the deceit, the way they had manipulated us for their own selfish desires. It had all come crashing down, and they had no one to blame but themselves. For a moment, I thought about Sarah. She had been quiet since our confrontation that morning, probably too overwhelmed to process what had happened. I imagined her sitting in the house, surrounded by the evidence of her betrayal, with nowhere to turn. She was probably realizing now that everything she thought she could get away with had slipped right through her fingers. By the time I got home, Sarah was gone. Her belongings were packed, and she had left a short note on the kitchen counter. I'm sorry. I didn't know what I was doing. Please forgive me. It was pathetic. A last-ditch effort to win me over with a half-hearted apology. But it didn't matter anymore. The forgiveness she was looking for wasn't something I could give. She had destroyed that part of me. As I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. It was finally over. All the lies, the suspicion, the gut-wrenching nights of doubt it was behind me now. Sarah was out of my life, and I was free. I sat down, letting the quietness of the empty house sink in. For the first time in months, the silence felt peaceful. It was over, and I had one. Not in the way I'd originally expected, but in a way that left me feeling stronger, more sure of myself. Sarah and Mark had tried to destroy our lives for their own twisted pleasure, but in the end, they had only succeeded in destroying their own. Weeks passed, and life began to settle into a new normal. Sarah had moved out entirely, and the divorce process was rolling smoothly. The weight I had carried for months was finally lifted, leaving behind a strange sense of peace. I hadn't heard much from Sarah since that final note she left, except through mutual friends. She had moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, jobless and with few people willing to stand by her. Apparently, word about her affair had spread further than I expected, and most of her friends had distanced themselves. It was a poetic kind of justice, her life crumbling, just like she had tried to crumble mine. As for Mark, his situation was even worse. Anna had filed for divorce, and from what I heard, she was hitting him hard in the settlement. The firing from his job had rocked his entire life, and with no income and no place to stay, he was in a downward spiral. I couldn't say I felt sorry for him. This was his doing. One day, I ran into Anna again. We'd stayed in touch here and there, but it had been a while since our last conversation. She looked more at peace, like someone who had finally closed the door on a painful chapter. We grabbed a quick coffee, and she filled me in on the final stages of her divorce from Mark. "I'm getting the house," she said, smiling, "and he's leaving with barely anything. I think he's trying to stay with friends now, but no one's exactly rushing to help him." "I can't say I feel bad for him," I replied, shaking my head. "He got what was coming to him." Anna nodded. "Same goes for Sarah. I still can't believe they thought they could pull this off." We sat there in comfortable silence for a moment, both of us reflecting on how much had changed in such a short time. Our marriages had been shattered, but somehow, we were both stronger for it. "I'm glad we teamed up," Anna finally said. "I don't think I would have had the strength to get through it without knowing someone else understood." "Me too," I agreed. "They thought they had us fooled, but in the end, we outplayed them." As we finished our coffee, Anna smiled, genuinely this time, not out of bitterness or anger, but out of a shared sense of closure. We both had a long road ahead of us, but it was a road free of the deception that had once clouded our lives. Over the next few months, I started focusing on myself again. I threw myself into work, reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in a while, and even started taking up new hobbies. It was strange, having all this free time, all this energy that wasn't spent trying to figure out if my wife was lying to me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was living for myself, not for someone else's lies. One day, out of the blue, I got a message from Sarah. A simple, "Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long time, unsure if I even wanted to open that door again. But after a few minutes of debating, I decided to hear her out. We met in a small park near downtown Seattle. She looked different, worn down in a way I hadn't seen before. The confident, adventurous woman I had married was gone, replaced by someone who had clearly been humbled by her mistakes. "I just wanted to apologize," she said quietly, avoiding my eyes. "I know it's too late, and I know I can't fix what I did, but I'm sorry." I nodded, not quite sure what to say. Her apology felt sincere, but it didn't change what had happened. It didn't undo the months of deceit and manipulation. "I appreciate the apology, Sarah," I said carefully, "but we're past that now. There's no going back." She nodded, her face tight with emotion. "I know. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I lost, and I'm going to have to live with that." I didn't feel anger anymore, just a quiet sense of finality. This was it, the end of the story. "Take care of yourself, Sarah," I said, standing up to leave. She watched me go, her eyes filled with regret, but I didn't look back. I had already closed that chapter. As I walked away, I felt lighter than I had in months. It was over, not just the marriage, but the pain, the betrayal, the anger. Everything that had weighed me down was finally behind me. Life wasn't perfect yet, but it was mine again. I had my future in my hands, free from the lies and manipulation of the past. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Whatever came next, I was ready for it. Discover more stories. Subscribe today.